26th day of the month of Mar Cheshvan, and we are in the middle of the fifth parak of Maseches Pesachim. We are on Samach Aleph Amud Beis, right at the top of the page. The Gemara asks the question as follows: Shachatay lemulin. If you shechted the Korban Pesach, lemulin, for people that have had a bris milah, al menashi is kapru by arelim bizrika, with the intention that when the zrikas adam occurs later, when the kohen is going to throw the blood on the mizbech later on, that's also going to provide kapara. It's going to work. It's going to work. That there's some participation to some extent of arelim, of uncircumcised people. This is going to count for bizrika, meaning everybody knows that a Korban Pesach can only be eaten by somebody that has had a bris milah. But somebody says, I know that I can't eat the Korban Pesach. I want to be part of the mitzvah in some way or another. I'm going to have. So the kohen is going to say, okay, no problem. Shech the Korban Pesach with the intention that zrika is also going to count as like a quasi mitzvah of some nature for somebody that has not had a bris milah. Now, we should point out that the word she's kaparba here is not in its fullest sense, because there's no kapara, there's no atonement that comes as a result of Korban Pesach. It is being go to the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, which there's two mitzvahs. The Sefer HaChinuch and the Rambam count that there's two mitzvahs. The mitzvah of the shchitas hakarban, and there's a mitzvah of the achilas hakarban. Those shchitas haPesach and achilas haPesach. Those are the two things that are part and parcel of this mitzvah. But an Orel is not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach, but can he have some participation in the zrika? So the answer is no. So it says the Gemara, what happens if the korban was shechted, the Pesach was shechted with the intention that this is going to be she's kapar arelim bizrika? Says the Gemara as follows: Rav Chisda Amar Pasal. Rav Chisda says that the whole thing is Pasal, and you have not been yotze the Korban Pesach at all. Rabba Amar Kosher. Rabba says that it's kosher. And the question is, of course, what is the rationale behind this? Rav Chisda Amar Pasal. Rav Chisda says that it's Pasal. Why? Because yesh machshavas arelim bizrika. Because if you were to intend at the time of zrika, at the time of throwing the blood on the mizbech, that this is going to work for arelim, that machshava would invalidate the korban at that point in time, and therefore it would be a problem. Rabba Amar Rabba says kosher. Ein machshavas arelim bizrika. Rabba says no problem. It's kosher. Why? Because ein machshavas arelim bizrika, that there's no intention, meaning it's irrelevant. The intention the person has during zrika for arelim is irrelevant, because arelim, the zrika is not needed, strictly speaking, as part of the mitzvah of achila. Meaning the achilas hakarban is already going to be happening by the balim. Rashi points out here, it's not going to help to be puzzled, meaning that any intention that you have for an orel at that point in time is irrelevant. And now we are going to understand, says Rashi, what exactly is the rationale behind all of this. Amar Rabba. Rabba is the one that says that this is kosher. Mina aminlach. How do I explain this? Meaning, where do I know this din from? The Tanya, we have a brisa that says as follows. We have a long brisa, and the brisa is gonna iron out exactly how this whole thing operates. The brisa says as follows: Could it be that with regards to an Orel, an uncircumcised person, that he would be able to puzzle, he would be able to invalidate the entirety of the group that comes with him? So you have a group of 20 people, one of them doesn't have a bris milah. Can he puzzle the whole group that it didn't work for the Korban Pesach for any of them? Vidinu, it would be logical. Since uncircumcised people, meaning having an orla, being uncircumcised, is posel. V'tuma poselis, and the tuma is also going to invalidate a person from bringing Korban Pesach. My tumah also by mitzvahs tumah kecholatim, and just like with regards to tumah, partial tumah is not considered to be like the whole thing is tam. Meaning, one person in the group becomes tameh, doesn't make the whole group tameh. So too, one person being an orel doesn't make the whole group of people into arelim. It doesn't change the nature of the chabura. That is option number one, says the brisa. Alternatively, you could think about the whole thing differently. Literally, it is as if you are going in this way. Since Orla is Paisel, since Orla is invalidating, you cannot bring a Korban Pesach if you're an Orel. Uzman Paisel, and bring the Korban Pesach outside of its appropriate time, meaning having the intention that you're going to eat it outside of its appropriate time, is possible. I mean, that would be chutz l'zman. That's a din of pigul. If you thought I'm going to eat the Korban Pesach tomorrow for lunch, everybody would agree that would puzzle the whole Korban Pesach. Orla is posel and zman is posel. Mazman asaba mikzas zman kachol zman. And if you said, I'm going to eat most of the Korban Pesach on Allah Seder, some of it we're going to keep for lunch tomorrow. That's mikzas, a little bit of zman, of time that you had outside of the halachic framework that is appropriate, outside of that zman, is made as if you invalidated the whole thing for all the zman. Meaning the fact that you said I'm going to have a kazayis of Pesach tomorrow for lunch, as opposed to on Allah Seder, so then the whole thing is going to be possible. It says, maybe one person that is an Arel makes the whole group into Orla, meaning Zman, a little bit of Zman that's Shaloi Kedin is going to make the whole thing Zman Shaloi Kedin. Maybe one person that's an Arel is going to make the whole thing into Arelim, the whole group into Arelim. Says the Brisa, Nira, let's see, which one is it more similar to? Is Arel more similar to Tameh, or is Arel more similar to Zman? Dan davashe eno noeg bechal hazvachim, midavashe eno noeg bechal hazvachim. Va'al yechech Zman, shenoeg bechal hazvachim. So says the Brisa, there's two ways of looking at this. What is more similar? Maybe we should say that we should compare Arel, which is not a din in any other korban. There's no other korban outside of Korban Pesach that an Arel is not allowed to participate. So this is unique to Korban Pesach. We should compare something that exists that only exists by Korban Pesach to something that only exists by Korban Pesach. Meaning, the din is that any other korban, if an Orel wants to eat it, he can, and a Tameh that wants to have a korban brought on his behalf can have a korban brought on his behalf. Both of these dinim are dinim that are unique to Korban Pesach, that an Orel and a Tameh are not allowed to participate at all. It says, Va'al yechech Zman, and don't bring me this din from Zman, from thinking mechutz lizmanai, from contemplating, I'm going to bring this korban with the intention that I'm going to eat it outside of its appropriate time. That's something that exists by all korbanos, at least all korbanos that are eaten. Meaning, says the Brisa, let's compare things that are unique to Korban Pesach to things that are unique to Korban Pesach. Alternatively, or you can think about it differently. Maybe we should compare something that is sometimes going to be permissible from something that is sometimes going to be permissible. What is this thing? So we should learn something. So the opposite. Sorry, there's never going to be allowed from something that is also never going to be allowed. We should learn from don't learn from something that is sometimes permissible. What is this rationale? What's this thinking? We should compare, says the Brisa in option number 2. Means something that isn't permitted ever. That's an Orel. An Orel is never permitted to eat from Korban Pesach, to participate in Korban Pesach. We should learn that from something like the intention of Chutz D'Zmana, which is also never permitted. You can never think Chutz D'Zmana and the korban will be allowed. And don't compare this to Tumah, which is sometimes permissible. The halacha is that Tumah Hutra B'tzibur, if the entirety or the majority of the Jewish people bring the Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach is Tameh, then everybody brings their Korban Pesach even though they're Tameh. Says the Brisa in option number 2. Perhaps we should compare Orel to Zman and not to Tumah, because Orel and Tumah have different halachas. Maybe we should compare Orel to something that is more similar to Orel in terms of its permissibility, which is never. Talmud Lema. So how are we going to learn? Either like option 1 or like option 2. We're going to compare it to Zman, or we're going to compare it. We're going to compare it to Tumah, or we're going to compare it to Zman. Talmud Lema, the pasuk teaches as follows. This is the end of the Brisa. Talmud Lema. Zeus. So the pasuk says, opening up the pasuk over here because it's kedai to get the pasuk inside. Pasuk says as follows: Yomi Hashem el Moshe ve'Aaron, says Hashem to Moshe and Aaron, Zois chukas haPasach. This is the law of the Pesach offering. Kol ben nechar lo yochal by. Any ben nechar, any non-Jew is not allowed to eat it. And we'll see later on that there are other additional dinim that are mentioned within this context, which is pasuk mem ches in the same paragraph. V'chi yagur itchal gerva asa pesach Hashem he mol lo yikol zachar va'az yikrav l'asasai v'aya ke'ezracha aretz v'chol orel lo yochal bay. That's the two psukim that we're going to need here. You have Zois chukas haPasach, and then later on v'chol orel lo yochal bay. This is the Korban Pesach, and kol orel lo yochal bay. Uncircumcised people, kol uncircumcised people are not allowed to eat it. Says the Gemara as follows. What's the drasha? Talmud Leimer says the Brisa, Zois chukas haPasach. My Zois, what does Zois mean? This is the Korban Pesach. If you want to say the Kula Orla Pasla, it's to teach you that Zois chukas haPasach, that any Orel is not allowed to eat from Korban Pesach. Miktsasa loy pasla. But if you have one Orel person in the group that would not invalidate it, meaning Zois chukas haPasach, this is the halacha of Pesach. Don't think that that kula orla is going to be pasla, and miktsasa loy pasla, and a little bit is not going to disqualify it. Because this din you already know from the pasuk mikol orel. The pasuk says kol orel lo yochal bay, that all arelim cannot eat of it. That means all should not eat from it. That means if only some of the people don't have a bris milah, then the whole Korban Pesach is still going to be mutar, because it would only be in a case of kol orel. If everybody is an orel, that's when it would be aser, which means we already know the din of from kol orel that miktsas of the chabura, a small group within the chabura, are allowed to be arelim. And it still wouldn't puzzle the Korban Pesach. Now, obviously, the Orel cannot eat from it, but it wouldn't puzzle the Korban. So, elalav, it must be, says the Brisa, hachi kitani. This is what we are teaching. Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says, v'chol Orel, and all people that are Arelim, all people that are uncircumcised, kula orla pasla, the entirety of circumcision is going to puzzle it. Miktsasa le pasla. But if part of the group is an orel, that is not going to be. If everybody is an orel, it's going to be puzzled. A small group of it is not going to puzzle it. Okay. Maybe you want to say that the same thing is true of Zrikas Hadam, that at the point in time of throwing the blood on the Mizbeach, you can also have a miktsas. You can have in mind that this is going to work for a miktsas of the group that is arelim. The kula alma mias pasla. The kula orla mias pasla, because everybody uncircumcised is going to puzzle it. Talmud Laimar. That's when the pasuk comes along to tell you Zois chukas haPasach. Zois. This is the halacha of Pesach. Zois b'shchitahu. De kula orla mia pasla, aval zrika afilu kula orla nami loy pasla. Says Rava, and this is the meaning. This is the way that the Gemara is understanding within Rava. That when it comes to shechting of the Korban Pesach, that's where we have the din of kula orla would puzzle it and mixes orla would not puzzle it. That if the whole group is arelim, it would make it possible. But if only a small group of a small percentage of the group, or some of the group is arelim, it would not puzzle it. When it comes to zrika, where with zrikas adam there is no relevance to whether you're an orel or you're not an orel, afilu kula orla nami lo pasla. Even if the whole group was arelim, if you had in mind that the zrikas adam is for the sake of all arelim, that everybody is an orel, nami lo pasla, it also wouldn't invalidate that Korban Pesach, because Zrika is irrelevant to Orla, meaning it's only in the Shechita HaPesach, that's when the Gemara understands for Rav, it's only in the Shechita that there is a din of Orel, because Shechita is the thing that is relevant to eating. Okay. And if you want to ask, my kula Zrika, why would we be so makel when it comes to Zrika? This is challenging on Rabbah. It says, because there is no relevance to people that eat when it comes to Zrika Sadam. And that's what Rabbah meant when he said, Rabbah says it's kosher. Why? He says, Ein machshavas ochlin b'zrika. There's no relevance to thinking about the people that are eating it when it comes to the zrika. The zrika is simply about the avoda of being zorik, this blood on the mizbech. The eating of it is not shaykh. Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda says, the way that the Gemara is now going to understand for Rav Chisda, meaning both Rav and Rav Chisda said they didn't explain it. The Gemara is now explaining why they are thinking like this. Rav Chisda, according to Rav Chisda, Adarabba, Rav Chisda learns the whole brisa differently, or at least the conclusion of the brisa differently. Le'idach Chisa, he explains the opposite way around. The same question exists with regards to do we compare the din of Orel to Tuma or the din of Orel to Zman? And then when the Brisa says V'chol Orel lo yochel bay, what does that teach me? So he says Talmud Loimar, the pasuk wants to tell me V'chol Orel lo yochel bay kula Orel pasla miktzasa lo pasla, that the entirety of from Kol Orel you learn. Kol Orel means all those that are uncircumcised. Kula Orla Pasla, if the whole group is uncircumcised, it would pasel your Korban Pesach, but a percentage, a small group within your Chabura would not pasel your Korban Pesach. Aval Zrika, with regards to Zrika, throwing the blood of the Korban Pesach onto the Mizbech, afilu miktsasa nami pasla. He says, not that even if, Rav Chisda understands differently, he's not going to say, even if the whole group would be Arelim, it would be kosher. He says the opposite is being learned here. Even if a small percentage of your people in the Chabura were Arelim and you had intention that the Zrika should help for them, even a small percentage that wouldn't invalidate it for Shechita would invalidate for Zrika. Maybe you wanted to say that Miktsasa is okay for Shechita and Miktsasa is okay for Zrika. Because until the whole group is Arelim, it would not be possible. So we say Talmud Loimar. That's why the Brisa says Talmud Loimar Zois Chukas HaPasach. This is the halacha of Pesach. Shechita hu di miktsasa lo pasel. We are makel only when it comes to shechita, that a small percentage of the group wouldn't pasel the whole group. Aval zrika, but when it comes to throwing the blood onto the mizbeach, avilu miktsasa pasel, even if there would be a percentage, it would still pasel everything. V'chitema my chumra de zrika. And if you want to say if that's true, why are we so machmir bezrika and we're so makel with shechita? So says the Gemara, explaining Rav Chisda, the loy mikva pigul ella bezrika. The halacha is as follows. There's a halacha called pigul. Pigul is if you did any of the thoughts, if you did any of the avodas of the korban, of any korban, and the kohen was thinking either in the shechita or in the kabbalah or in the halacha or in the zrika, in any of those four avodas, that there was machshavas. Pigul means he thought that this should be eaten. He thought that this should be eaten michutz lizmano or michutz limkoimai. It should be eaten outside of the zman or outside of its appropriate place. Says the Gemara. In all of these cases, in all of these cases, if a person were to think michutz lizman or michutz limkamai, then the whole korban would be possible. But that's only going to be kaver. That's only going to apply. It only takes hold at the final avoda, because any other thing. For example, you've checked in the Korban Pesach and you think, the Ochlim are going to eat this tomorrow afternoon. So now it's potentially pigul. But it's only by Zrika that it becomes pigul, because if you thought, and by the way, this is a Korban Shlamim at some other point in time, then the Korban is puzzle, but it's not pigul. It's puzzle, but it's not pigul. That would be a different din. Pigul only takes place at Zrika, can only be confirmed at Zrika. And therefore, intention is most important when it comes to Zrika. And that's the Chumrah of Zrika. That would be the way that the Gemara is going to explain according to Rabbah and Rav Chisda. Maskiv la Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi disagrees with this whole mahalach in understanding both Rav Chisda and Rabbah. Why? Mimai dahai v'chol orel kula mashma. How do you know? How do you know that the pasuk that says v'chol orel, chol orel lo yochel bai, that all arelim means v'chol orel kula mashma, means the whole group are arelim. Dilma hai v'chol orel mashma. Maybe the way to read the pasuk v'chol orel lo yochel bai is kol dehu orla. A little bit of people in the group are arelim. Meaning kol orel lo yochel bai, does it mean all, or does it mean any? Does it mean all arelim, or does it mean any arelim in the group? So he says maybe the way to read the pasuk and therefore to read the brayso is kol dehu orla. Any group of arelim within the group would pass to the whole group because of Rahman and Zos, and therefore the Torah comes to tell you Zos chukas haPesach, that da'ad de'ika kula orla, that until the entire group are arelim, lo pasla, it's not going to passel. And there is no difference between shchita and zrika. They have exactly the same din. Meaning, perhaps that is the correct way of reading the brayso. And the way that the Gemara wanted to explain so far in how to understand the machlokes Rabbah and Rav Chisda based on different reads within this brayso doesn't make any sense, because maybe what the brayso is telling you is a third option here, which is that the way to read the pasuk is kol orel lo yochel bai should teach me that if there's any arel within the group, any uncircumcised person within the group, the whole group is going to be pasul. And therefore the Torah comes to tell you that this is the halacha of Pesach. This meaning that the whole group has to be arelim in order to pasul it, but if there's a few arelim in it, it's still going to be okay. And there's no relevance to whether that is in shchita or zrika. It would be the same halacha. That could not be the machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Chisda. And then the Gemara then is going to suggest a different understanding of the machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Chisda, and Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach we'll pick up tomorrow morning from Ela Amar Rav Ashi. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will see you then.